Hey, what's up everybody? It's Andre with AndreReese.Biz. All right guys, I'm your favorite RVA, Richmond, Virginia cycle casting technician out here on these bicycle streets. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm just gonna do a single topic today. I'm gonna talk about how I ended up proposing to my wife, Marilyn. And I mean, one of the things that, unless you're in the close circle, you've never actually probably heard the whole story, and you probably haven't seen the video about how the proposal and all that went down. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys the full story, and hang on to the end because I'll show you guys the video here of how the whole adventure happened. And so let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, today's topic, I'm going to talk about how ultimately I ended up on one knee with Marilyn, proposing to her. And we went from a long distance relationship to relocation to proposal, and then finally to married. So let's go ahead and start right now. Here we go. All right, so this all took place back in, it all started back in 2023, so and so here's the thing, I'm 58 and Marilyn's 44, so you can kind of backdate things a little bit. I think we've been married a little bit over, dating, a little over 3.5 years. So I was younger, and she was younger, of course, and so at the time I was single, and I had decided that I was going to relocate out of the U.S., and so I was preparing myself to exit the country. So I had downsized, sold off everything, only had a small amount of stuff left. And my goal was to leave out the country and go to Thailand or go to the Philippines. So I was actually going to take an extended, and it's not for the reasons you would normally think. I was just going there because it's inexpensive and really cheap to live. And so as the story kind of unfolds, I was preparing myself to be able to do this exit. And I got to the point where I was fully in motion on this particular project to get myself going. And so Marilyn actually had been a client of mine for a number of years, probably at least 2 years before that. And so she had came over from Europe where she was working. Her company relocated her, and they originally had a package for their directors, executives, that type of thing, where they would prepare their tax returns for them as part of their relocation. And it got to the point where after a year or two of her being on the program, she was trying to reach out to them and say, hey, I need to get my taxes done. And they're like, well, sorry to let you know now, we didn't anticipate on being the one, but we can no longer prepare your taxes for you. So we wish you well and hope that you find somebody in time to get the taxes done. And so at that point, there's a little bit of a panic, because April 15th is a hard deadline, and she was getting really close to that. So she reached out to her network and decided, and actually just asked them a simple question and said, hey, does anybody in here know of any person that prepares taxes? And one of my clients at the time sent her a message back and said, yeah, I know somebody. Reach out to him. He's fully remote, so it doesn't make a difference if you're in, I think she was in NYC at the time, and he can definitely get you help. So she reached out to me, and we were already past the deadline where I can start working on new stuff. And so I said, hey, best I can do is file an extension, and then we can kind of pop back online once I get back from break in April 15th. So she's like, cool. So file an extension for her, and then within a month, I reach out to her and we start the process. And so she became a client, right away, and we talked. And so the thing is, with all of my clients, I have a very personal relationship with all of them, so you figure they are sharing all their personal stuff with me. I got all their ID information, and it's not like anybody else's in the financial services world. I'm not unique. I got ID information, credit card information, bank information, social securities, date of birth, all that kind of stuff. And so I have a tendency to be really personal with my clients. If I'm going through anything at a personal level, I will share with them. Like, hey, I'm going through this and I'm having a problem with that and I got to do this medical thing or whatever. And it's kind of like a fair exchange to let them know that I'm not just in the game, because there's no reason for me to share my personal financial information with them, but just part of the comfort level. And I like to take the time to really get to know all my clients and understand them. I'll also look them up on Facebook if they're brand new, and then I'll send them a friend request and like their stuff and all that, and that way they can kind of see what I'm doing and what I look like if they've never met me before, which a lot of them haven't. And just kind of use tools that are available to you to try to make things a little bit more personal. Then whenever somebody reaches out for me the first time, or after we haven't talked for a minute, I don't ever get to the point where I just like, hey, so your problem is this. It's always a catch up and what's been going on and different things we talked about before. I always remember and say, hey, so what's going on with your son or your daughter, or what's happening with work, or how's your mom doing? Is she doing any better? Is she recovering? And so people really appreciate that, so it works out great and wonderful. So that's one of the things that I pride myself on doing, is having personalized relationships. So I got her information, of course, and I went on Facebook and I looked her up, found her, and I do like I do with all my clients. I went through her profile, checked it out, and I was like, oh wow, she seems like she's got a very cool life. She travels, a lot. She's got a lot of friends, so I think her Facebook profile went back, once we became friends, it went back for at least 10 years, so you can get kind of a picture of what somebody's up to. And so I was like, okay, all good. And I just kind of left it at that. So over the next couple years or so, COVID had happened, and she was on lockdown, and we would always, check in, around tax time. And so that's what I always do with all my clients. And so after a couple years of doing that, COVID was over finally. And I was talking to her, it was probably for the 2022 tax season. No, actually I think it was 2021. It's because we were doing it in 2022. And I was talking to her, and at that point I just started to travel quite a bit, and I was doing things around town and a lot of local stuff. And so whenever we got on the phone, we kind of talk about what was going on and what was happening and what we're up to, and kind of like travel stuff and all that. And so travel stuff and all that, and I would be like, yeah, this is where I am, this is what I'm going, this is what I'm doing. And so she would do the same thing. And so there was a point where she said, hey, I think what I'm going to do is, because I want to travel throughout the United States, and I want to see as much as possible. So I'm going, and I can work remote anywhere I want to. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from state to state, or at least the major ones. Like I'm going to go down to Miami and rent an Airbnb and stay down there for a month, and then I'll turn around and go to I'll go to San Francisco and spend a month there. Then I'll go to Seattle, spend a month there, and I'll go to, whatever you can think of, like Austin, Texas, those kind of things, spend a month there, and then just keep moving around. And so I was like, wow, that's so exciting. And I said, I was really like, wow, this is really cool. And I was looking forward to next year when we spoke, that she was going to have incredible tales of adventure and all that. And I was telling her, I said, yeah, at this point right now, I am downsizing. I've already hit the streets too. you know, and at some point, you know, I'll be on the road also as well. And actually, no, this predates that, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. But let me do this real quick. I'm gonna stop real fast and I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. So here we go. So like I said, I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. So actually, I had been in the back of my mind planning this ultimate exit, but by the time we had talked and she had told me about what she was doing, I wasn't at a point where I had already committed to being able to do that. And so all good, you know. And so she tells me about her adventure. She takes off, and you know, that's like the last time that we talked. And we didn't talk at all during the year. She didn't have anything that came up as far as like an issue that needed to be solved. And so I had been like really excited about talking to her at some point. You know, when you go through and you know, get ready for the new tax season, you're sending out organizers and postcards, and her name came up. I was like, oh man, I really want to hear about what happened. Good morning. I want to really hear about what happened and what her adventures were, because I did more stuff that year and started traveling more and getting on the plane a lot more and staying a lot of places long periods of time, that type of stuff. And so when tax season came up, she made an appointment. And then, so the first thing I did, of course, I was like, hey, so tell me about it. What did you do? Where did you go? What did you see? You know, and she was like, well, I left New York, or I think at the time she was in New Jersey. And she said, I left New Jersey and I went down to Richmond, Virginia, where I have family, and I stayed and I bought a house. So I was like, really? I was just shocked. I was like, oh man, I was like, oh. She said, yeah, she didn't get very far. And she ended up finding a very, very nice place. And I was like, wow, that's wonderful. So she told me about the whole thing and all that, and shared a lot of stories. And so she wanted to know kind of what I had been doing. And I told her, and I said, hey, you know, this is where I am, and this is what I have done, and all that. And so, and I told her about my plans on exiting and all that. And I think what she did was she had asked me a question just to clarify if I was single or if I was in a relationship. And I was like, no, I'm single, you know. And so we started to talk. She was like, well, a lot of places that you want to go, I want to go. And, you know, it's very, very cool. A lot of the things that you want to see and go with. If you want, and she said one of the hardest things for her sometimes is when she wants to travel, she oftentimes does stuff by herself because all of her friends are tied down or committed, or they're in relationships or whatever it might be. You know, they can't just easily go do stuff. And so this is one of the things that people that are single oftentimes experience, is that, especially if they have a lot of flexibility, they can't just pick up and other people just can't pick up and go and join them. So she just got comfortable traveling by herself. And because I was so busy, she was like, hey, you know, we should travel and go do things. And when you want to go to, you know, the Philippines and Thailand, you know, let me know. I'll go with you. And we can also, she was naming other places that she wanted to go over there, India, etc. And so I was like, okay, cool, bet. And so as we talked more and more, it was at the point where, hang on a second. Okay, and as we talked more and more and more, you know, it was kind of like, I was telling her that I was planning on going on a cruise at the end of the year. And
distance 4.0.
And so she was like, oh wow, I've never ever been on a cruise, so I would love to join you. And I said, okay, cool. And so she was like, kind of like, well, it sounds like it's a family cruise. Good morning. And there's going to be other people there. and I'm willing to join you. She said, just let me know how much it is, and I'll turn around and I'll send you the money right now. And I was like, I already got it taken care of. You know, I said, I've already put the deposit down, and you know, if you don't go with me, I still got to pay the same price I have to pay. And if you do go with me, I still got to pay the same price I got to pay. And so I said, if for whatever reason something happens or whatever, and you can't come or go, I would still have to pay the full price anyway. So I said, if you want to come, you know, come. And, you know, don't worry about it. I got it. And so, and then she was talking about, you know, we can hang out, and she's got some airline miles and vouchers and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, cool. And then after she committed to coming with me on the cruise, I was kind of like, I think she doesn't understand that this is kind of like a cabin with, that we'll be staying in. It's a small one together. And so, like I said, I had always admired her. I really did. And so I said, I'd like to, I don't know if it was the same day or the next day, I called her back and said, hey, I just wanted to just make sure you understand something. And I explained to her about the cabin. Good morning. Explained to her about the cabin and how everything was laid out, and and I just said, we have just one bed. And so, you know, and I just want to make sure you completely understand that. And so she was kind of like, oh, I didn't realize. And so she was like, well, do you snore and all that other kind of stuff? I said, yeah, you know, it's all good. I said, I can sleep with one foot on the floor, you know, like they used to do back in the old days. We kind of laughed about that. And I said, hey, you know, we could always hang out before then just to make sure that everything is cool. And so that was my segue into saying that we can start talking and seeing how things go. So, you know, she was like, yeah, let's do that. And so tax season came and went, and you know, she would text me in the morning and see how I was doing, and you know, during the latter part of the season, and we would talk, and this is after I got her stuff done. And so we started talking regularly, daily, texting, that type of stuff, you know, good morning text, good night text. And so we just started talking like about a lot of stuff. And like I said, I wasn't trying to get into a relationship at all. I was 1 foot out of the United States. And so I started talking to her more. We had so many things in common, you know, the way that we grew up, and, you know, I was very intrigued by everything about her. And the nice thing is, I am a very, very curious person. And I will watch just random topics about stuff that is completely unrelated to anything that I do, just because it's cool. So she was an engineer, and we got to talk a lot about technical stuff and all that. So it was very exciting and very stimulating. She had worked in the airline industry, and she had done a lot of stuff in a lot of the technology that you see now that's global. She was on teams years ago that helped build that stuff. And so the different stories that she told and her travels and things that she's done, it was all just so exciting. And so as we talk more and more, I started to realize, you know, as we started talking about relationships and kind of what we've gone through before in the past, and kind of like if we were looking for and all that, I started to realize that she had all the characteristics of what I was looking for at a dream level, you know, and so that really messed me up. And so I was like, this is not what I was intending upon happening here. And so I called my boys and I talked to them individually and said, hey, you know, you know I'm for the streets, and I'm about the streets. I'm about ready to be in the streets, and you know, the streets are mine, like Scarface would say, you know. And they said, hey, you know what? You know, you already know what to do. And I didn't want to get to the point where down the road, you know, if I blew this, that I would like really, really regret it. And so I talked to her a lot more, and we got to the point where we were really starting to fall for each other, you know. And so tax season was coming and going, and we started talking about, and actually what I had done at one point, I had written a manual about myself. And it took me several, and I'll probably do a topic on this separately. I went through and detailed everything completely about what makes me happy, what brings me joy. I talked about my magnificent characteristics that make me unique compared to other people. I talked about things that I want to do, things that I don't want to do. I talked about my goals and my purpose. And it took me, several years to put this together. And I talked about my personality type and, those kind of things. So it was a long period of introspection. And so I was telling her about this, and I said, this is what everything I want and need and what I'm all about is in my manual. And so she's like, well, share it with me. And so I took the manual and sent it to her, and she took some time and she read it. And she came back, she said, all this stuff on here is no problem. So I was like, man. And so at that point, we kept talking more and more. And we hadn't really even talked like by FaceTime. And so we started to FaceTime each other regularly and, go to bed and wake up in the morning with each other. And then it got to the point where, things are working out really good. And we were talking and we were saying, well, if we end up doing this, moving forward, with me on one side of the country and you on another, there's really just only one inevitable conclusion. So she was like, yeah, I'm cool. And so I said, all right, I'll do this. Let's meet up soon. And like I said, tax season was just finishing up. And I'll treat you to a really nice experience. And then somewhere towards the end of the experience, if everything checks out, we'll end up in a relationship. So, she ended up, I was going on a cruise right after tax season out of Southern California, flew down, went on the cruise, came back up. And she had airline miles with Delta. So she booked a flight and she flew in the evening that I got back from, being on the cruise. And I went to SFO, picked her up, and then she came back. And so we met each other for the first time. It was so warm and so familiar, and brought her back. And then the next day I ended up taking her out to one of my favorite spots out in the Sausalito area. There's like this houseboat community. And so we stayed on the water. And then I brought food and made breakfast, lunch, and dinner and cooked for her. And then we ended up going to my favorite beach and hung out there. And I ended up taking her on, because she said she really hadn't had anybody that had, really had taken the time to, court her. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. So I took her to, I ended up taking her to Yoshi's in the Bay Area. We watched Tina Marie in concert, and man, that lady, she can blow, I'm telling you. So we did that. We had sushi there, and we ended up going to San Francisco, spending the day. We walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, and then, went down Lombard Street, came back. Then she still was here, and she came back to my house, and we hung out for a few more days there. And we did some local stuff. I took her to In-N-Out Burger, and we went to a street fair and had a ball. And then I think we even went over to, hang out and look at the water and all kinds of cool stuff is what we did. And a lot of it didn't really cost a lot. It just was, thoughtfulness is what it was. And so I wasn't really trying to impress her. I was just at the point where this is kind of like the stuff I like to do. And I had told her when we first started really talking seriously before she came, I said, hey, if once we meet each other, and because I forget when she came in, it was like April 28th maybe, and I said, hey, once we meet, we hang out for a few days, if you got all your fingers and toes and everything is what it is, I said, I'm willing to put an offer on the table and we can become, boyfriend and girlfriend. So she was very happy about that. And so once May 1st came, I woke her up. I was like, hey, guess what? She sat up. She's like, hey. And I said, hey, I just wanted to run a few things by you real quick. And so I jokingly, talked about, hey, this is, everything checks out. You are who you are. You got all your fingers and toes and all that stuff. And so, hey, let's go ahead and make a go at this. And so she said yes, and the rest of the trip was even more wonderful. And so the thing is, I took her to the airport and dropped her off, and we knew it. It was like we had already kind of talked about figuring out how we were going to meet each other regularly. And we figured like once every couple months or something is what we were going to do. But I had a really good time. And so I talked to her, and she went back home, all good. And so I didn't realize that I had like 250,000 miles on with American. So I said, I really enjoyed hanging out with you. I'm gonna go ahead and use some of those miles and come out and see you. So I think I came like in 3 weeks, and I was gonna stay for a week and come back. And I love bike riding, so I bought a bicycle and had it drop shipped out there to her. And went ahead and flew overnight out of San Jose, went to Boston, came to Richmond, landed, she picked me up, and great fanfare. Took me home, and everything was really cool and kind and sweet. Made food and all that. So, everything was wonderful, and we just had so much fun in that week, and ended up going back home. And I said, well, I'll come back again at some point, maybe in the next month or so. But then I realized that if I had 250,000 miles and I had spent 25,000 round trip going out to go see her, I said, well, I have at least 10 trips that are available that I don't have to pay for. But the hassle of going like 12 hours to make it and get off the ship, to get off the plane and make it to her, it's a lot for traveling, especially if you're doing red eyes and stuff. And so there was a brand new airline called Breeze Airways, and they were like the startup, and they were trying to deal with underserved markets and stuff like that. And so what ended up happening was they were the only people that flew direct from San Francisco to Richmond. They were the only ones. And so the trip was like 4.5 hours is what it was. And so I was like, well, let me take Breeze next time. So 3 weeks came up, I ended up taking Breeze, and everything was all smooth. The flight time was quick, and then I took the flight on the way back. And then because it became so, and the tickets were only like $300 round trip. It was inexpensive at all, so I ended up saving my miles. And it all worked out. So it got to the point where I would travel to see her, and I would stay, because a week, when I went to go see her for a week, it was like I was counting down when I had to go. I was like, I got 5 days left, 4 days, oh shoot, I got 2 days left. Let's get it in. But when I went and stayed for 2 weeks, really like a week and a half of that, I wasn't even tripping on having to go. And then of course, like the last 3 days, I'm getting myself ready and getting things planned to pack on the way out and all that. And so it all worked out wonderful. So I started doing that, coming for 2 weeks. And then because I was remote, I would oftentimes go back to the Bay Area, and I get on the plane, and I was like, why am I going back? I don't have really anything that I need to do. So I got to the point where I would spend like 3 weeks there, and all my mail and stuff was going to my office or my P.O. box. I was having packages delivered to my office. So I didn't really have any exposure at all to like have to go back and get all my mail off the step or whatever it might have been. So it all worked out wonderful and worked out great. And so we had talked before about 6 months mark that we would kind of talk and see where we were, and if we were in a great place, we would move forward to some point, that I would propose to her. And so let's kind of like fast forward to that so you guys get the backstory. I traveled back and forth. I started spending long holidays with her and periods of time, and we would oftentimes travel and together, and I'd fly there or meet her someplace and hang out with her, that type of stuff. So we had a fantastic time. We did all kinds of stuff. And in the meantime, I was meeting her family and her friends, and she was meeting mine. And we knew where we were going. And so it got to the point where about 6 months into it, I had a conversation with her brother, and because she comes from the Ghanaian culture. And I said, well, hey, if this is what I'm kind of thinking about doing, how do I have to go about this and be able to make it happen? So we talked to kind of explain things, what is typically done, and it all worked. It worked out great. So I did all those things over the next 6 months or so. And at that point, it was up to me to kind of plan how this was all going to go down. And so when tax season ended the next year, my goal was to exit out of the Bay Area and move to Richmond and be with her. And so towards the end of that process of coming to the end of tax season, we were kind of talking about rings, and I was kind of trying to shop and all that. And, there's so much stuff online versus going to a store, and I didn't want to go to like one of those mall stores that are marked up. So I started shopping online. I started kind of looking at different things, finding out what she liked. She would show me. And then I was like, I really would like to see this instead of buying it. And so the place that I was looking at, they actually had showrooms throughout the United States. And we were headed to New York. And like I said, this is probably about the last month before I was going to relocate out of the Bay Area. And she had to go to New York on business. I went with her, tagged along. And the place where they have the diamond store, it's like a few blocks from where she works at. So I made an appointment and went there. She met up with me, and we spent several hours looking at all the different choices. And she found what she liked, the combination, and the lady wrote it down on a piece of paper and said, hey, if you're gonna order it, this is how you order it. And so, cool. And so went back home, was packing, getting myself together, and finishing out tax season. Good morning. And she called me, and I was gonna originally move towards the end of April to her, but she called me. She said, hey, I got a chance to go to Paris. You wanna go? I was like, sure, when is it? She says it's like a week, a little bit of like a week and a half before you're supposed to come. And I was like, that don't make no sense for me to leave here, go with you to Paris, fly back, pack everything up, and then fly back. So I said, let me just accelerate everything. So I went ahead and accelerated everything, packed up, closed out, sold my car, and flew and met her. And by the time that I was anticipating on coming, I had already, at that point, I had already, bought the ring online so that it would be, because once I landed, I think we had like 2 days in Richmond before we were gonna leave and go to Paris. And so I went ahead and bought the ring and talked to the lady that helped me and worked out the timing where it would be delivered like on the day that I arrived in New York, or in Richmond. And so that happened, that came, and I landed Maryland, went to the mail room and got the package, and I said, hey, leave it alone, just don't worry about it. And so, all good. It all worked out great and perfect. And so I had the ring, we went to Paris, and so what I had done is, I had gone on a trip before to Alaska, and I had explained to her, I was like, wow, Alaska is so beautiful. I had spent time on the phone talking to her, and she was like, wow, it sounds like an incredible place. And I was talking about, there's kind of like a certain spiritual element to it, untouched element to it. And so she was like, I would love to go to Alaska. And so I had booked a cruise for us to go to Alaska. We were essentially going to go. So what it was, I had originally planned on leaving California, shipping my stuff out towards her, flying up to Seattle and meeting her for the cruise. And then we would go on the cruise, I would propose to her, and then fly home and be with her there. And so I figured I would propose to her before I moved in, but because of the Paris trip, it didn't work out that way. So I spent a couple days there at her house before we actually went to Paris, came back, refreshed our suitcases, then we flew to Seattle, then we got on the cruise ship to Alaska. I don't remember what it was. It was a 7, 8, or 9 day cruise. It was a beautiful adventure. And so that's where I had originally planned on proposing to her, was in Alaska, you know. And so it all worked out. And you know, we get back from Paris, we fly to Seattle, and she knew that it was coming, but she didn't know when it was going to happen at all. And so she got her nails done, kept them done, and then she, you know, had some nice outfits, and, you know, of course, she's anticipating me proposing to her on the cruise ship. And so, in the end, you know, she didn't know when it was coming. So I knew ahead of time that we were going to be doing this bicycle adventure, and we were going to, because we love riding bikes, we were going to go up, and I think we got, it was in Skagway. So we were going to get off at the port, and, hang on one second real quick. Oops, excuse me. We're going to head up, we were going to get off the ship, and we were going to head up to the top to where the Yukon Territory is. Then we would ride bikes downhill back into town. So that was the whole adventure that we're going to do. And so as I was trying to research on when to do it, I was like, hey, you know, let me see along the route and how it works. And I did a lot of research and found that there's a number of different waterfalls that we went by. And one of them was Bridal Veil Falls. And so I was like, oh man, that's perfect. You couldn't have made it work any better way than this. And so I said, okay, you know, let's make it happen. So like I said, we got on the ship, we went to a number of different ports, and it worked out that on this particular day, when we got off, you know, we were probably at the halfway mark of the cruise. And so it was cold. It's Alaska, and it's in late April. So everything is kind of thawed out, but there's still tons of snow. And so we were going to be going up to the top of the mountain and riding down. So we had, she had a snowsuit that she had bought from North Face, and I have a very, very thick sweatsuit that I wear all the time. That works for me. And so once we got off the ship, actually before that, I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going down. And she was actually in the bathroom for a minute, taking a shower and getting ready. And so I was practicing. I went online and I Googled, you know, if you're going to propose, do you get down your right knee, your left knee? And so I literally, you know, practiced proposing. I was like pulling the thing out of my pocket and opening it while I was going down on a knee. And so I practiced it for like 10 minutes to make sure I got the movement down and I had muscle memory. It was all ready to go. So I was like, cool, I'm ready to go. So we get off the ship and we're getting ready to queue up for the excursion, and I'm nervous, of course. And then I said, well, let me go talk to these guys real quick. So I went over and grabbed one of the guys that was the guide, and I said, hey, bro, this is what's going down. I want to propose to my wife, to my fiance. I want to propose to my girlfriend and make her my fiance. And I want to do it at Bridal Veil Falls. And so the guy was like, oh my God, this is so incredible. We've never, ever had anything like this happen ever again. He's like, well, what can we do to make this wonderful? I said, hey, just do me a favor. When we get to Bridal Veil Falls, you know, I've already peeped it out on Google and all that. I'm going to turn my phone on and give it to you so you can record us. That's all you got to do. And then don't do it this way, do it that way. And she's like, perfect. And so he told the other guys were kind of like, you know, that were going to be taking us. So we went up to the very top. And so talking to Marilyn afterwards, she felt that there was a chance that I was going to propose to her on this particular excursion, because we were like way up on top of a mountain. And it's kind of like one of those symbolic things, like we're up on the top of the world, we're gonna stay up on the top of the world, we're gonna continue on, continue climbing, that whole thing. So we got to the top, it was wonderful, and we're taking pictures and all that type of stuff. And I got to the point where it was like, well, let's get on the bikes, let's start working our way down. So she was like, oh, okay, so it's not happening at all. So then she's like, well, maybe it'll happen a little bit later. So we rode down, and then we get to the first stop, there's like another nice overlook, and she's thinking like maybe it might happen, and nope. Then we end up driving down, like going down a little bit more, and to make another stop, and nothing happened. So at that point, she's kind of like, it's not gonna happen because we're getting close to the bottom of the hill. And so the next stop, I asked the guy, I said, is it Bridal Veil Falls? He said, yes. I said, okay, cool, we're ready to go. And so we ride on down to Bridal Veil Falls, and we get there, and Marilyn starts going over to the waterfall. And I hand my phone to the guy, and I'm like, hey dude, it's about ready to go down. So the guy grabs my phone, and Marilyn's taking pictures at the falls. And then I turn around, and actually I walk up to her, I get behind her, I take some pictures. And then after we're done doing that, it was time for us to like move so that other people can come to the falls that were in our group. And I grabbed her and I said, baby. And she's like, no, no, no. No, she said, I was shaking, I was a little bit nervous and all that. She was like, no. She says, I'm not dressed for this. I'm not this, I'm not that. I was like, baby, we are running out of time. And I said, you know, we're running out of vacation and it's gotta happen. And so she was like, oh, ah. And so I ended up going down on one knee and grabbed the ring, and I said, hey, and I had something that was prepared. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was more or less like the typical stuff. That we've had a great time, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So will you be my wife? You know, and so she said, of course, yes, and she was so excited, and I slipped the ring on her finger, and so she actually, I think she gave me her right hand. I was like, no, your left hand, you got to pull your glove off, so I slipped the ring on, and then of course we kissed, and the guy was so happy, and he did a great job recording the video and all that. And let me move here so it's not so noisy. He did a great job recording the video, and he thanked us, and he was just so happy that it all happened, it went down. And you know, the other guys that were there, the other people, they were all clapping and excited. So we rode on down back to, so actually let me do this right now. Let me just go ahead and stop here. I still got time, and I'll show you guys the video here real quick. I think it's about less than 2 or 3 minutes, you know, so it won't take long, and I'll be right back. Okay, here we go.
Oh yeah. Awesome. You guys look great. Let me see that ring. Ooh! Look at this view behind you guys. All these mountains. Yeah, we see that ring again. Oh my gosh. Congratulations.
All right, guys, you guys got to see the video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And so that was me proposing to Marilyn. And so to finish out the rest of the day, we ended up riding down to the bottom of the hill, and we ended up taking the thing back to the boat. And that evening, I actually had reserved a sit-down, I think it was a sit-down dinner is what because on there you have to pay. And so I went ahead and booked a specialty dining dinner, and we had dinner that night, and it was a great time. I think it was like an 80s night or something. So she was wearing an afro wig, and I think I was wearing like a shiny shirt, you know, is how it all went down. So we had a great time. So we finished out the rest of the cruise, and she let all of her people and her family and her friends know that I had proposed, and everybody was so happy and so excited. And so that's what it was, guys, that we had and that's how everything went down. And so all I want to say here is that we've now been married for a year. So in total, we've dated, our total time together has been like, our total time that we've been together now is over 3 years is what it was. And so we dated about 2 years and 3 months total before we actually jumped the broom and said I do. And that was fantastic. We had a great time enjoying ourselves, traveling around the world, seeing family and friends, and going to family reunions. And we probably saw in total probably no less than like 700 people. So it was 700 friends and family members and stuff that we met with on both sides of the family, you know, and so it was an incredible journey and an incredible adventure. So like I said, I never had intended before on getting married at all. I was about ready to leave the country, and when I met her, I was like, oh man, this is not what I expected. What should I do? And so like I said, if there's nothing, and so like in the last little bit here, there's nothing wrong with being in a long distance relationship at all, but you have to be honest with yourself. Most long distance relationships don't work. If you're not there with each other, you're not around each other, there's so many opportunities to be non-legitimate with what you are doing, and you can feel more about something than somebody else is feeling. And so I even see like a lot of sisters these days, a lot of them have these long distance relationships where they've, you know, they're back to the continent, and they're dating people over there, and that the people over there have like no means at all to even come to the US, especially now how tight things are. So they end up getting married, and they have like 1 or 2 visits or whatever it might be. And so, and there's other versions of, you know, long-term relationships where somebody might be in a relationship, they go off to college, or you know, at a trade show and you meet somebody. But the difficult thing about being in a relationship is that you, at some point, if you are in a long-term relationship, you're going to have to consolidate, you know, and that's the most difficult part. So if you're in a relationship with somebody, no matter who they are, whether they're close to you or a long way away from you, it's really all about intention. So if you want to be in a relationship, you know, like I said, it gets harder and harder and harder as you get older, but you can actually look up and find some wonderful gems if you play your cards right. And so the thing you got to do is you have to date with intention. So if you really truly want to be in a relationship and get married, you need to express that to the other person and stand on that business. And if they're not feeling the same way, or they're not at that point in their life, you know, I almost say don't waste your time. It might be better just to be single, because what ends up happening a lot of times is if you get yourself yoked up with somebody that you really like and they don't really like you all that much, somebody can come along at some point that was your person, and you can miss that blessing, you know, and you know, you don't want to end up on the short end of the stick. So, you know, like I said, it was one of those things where it worked out wonderful for us. There's no guarantee that it's going to work out wonderful for everybody else. You have to have means. You got to have a way to be able to make it happen. You got to have, and like I said, and I tell her all the time, if I worked at the plant and I had like 3 weeks worth of vacation a year, there's no way this really would have worked, because I'm tied to my job and I can only leave like once every 4 months to come see her, it becomes very hard and it becomes very, very difficult. And shout out to anybody that's in a long-term relationship that's trying to make it work and making it work, or somebody that might be married to somebody or dating somebody that's in the military, that's overseas on long deployments and all that. It's hard, it's difficult. So, you know, in order to prevent the stress from destroying your relationship, you guys want to try to have as much in common as possible, as much and as often as you can. And then most importantly, the other thing that you want to do is you want to try to remove as many factors that can negatively affect your relationship that you can actually ultimately control. So I'm not here ever to tell you guys to do one thing or another. And I know when I was a little kid, I was involved in some long-term relationships that were just, you know, several towns away. And those things were so hard that this was in my early, you know, dating life and all that. Like I wasn't even 20 yet, you know, and actually I don't even think I was even 18 yet, you know, but, you know, traveling a very, very short distance, you know, when you're a kid, you don't have a car, you have to rely upon the bus, and, you know, it's very, very hard. It's very difficult. And as you get older, you know, as I got older, you know, you can live in the Bay Area. You can date somebody in Sacramento. You know, it's you know, a 2-hour drive to get there and get back, and you got a car. That's not really that big of a deal. You can stay there over the weekend, and then they can swap it out and all that. So, you know, there are long distance relationships that are workable. But ultimately, in the end, you're going to have a means in a way that you guys can both share in the distance closing. And Marilyn did come out to the Bay Area one more time after that. She was out for a conference. She hung out with me, you know. But in the end, you know, as we were talking, I was like, would you consider moving to the Bay Area? She's like, absolutely not. I said, you know what? I don't blame you at all. There's really nothing here. I'm more than happy to move to Richmond because there's so many things to do, and it's such a wonderful part of history. And I really felt at home when I got there, and to come to find out later on that that's where my people first landed. And so, you know, I recently found out that my people have been here for 407 years. So the very first slave ship that got diverted from Mexico by pirates and landed in Richmond, Virginia on August 20th, 1619, my people were on that ship. And so I felt a certain emotional connection to the land here when I got here, you know. And so in the end, like I said, it's very tough, it's very difficult, you know. Do things for the right reason. You guys got to make sure you're on the right page. You guys got to communicate. You can't have really any time where, and so like, I always knew where Marilyn was. She never had any missing time. So she's like, I'm gonna go hang out with my girls or whatever, and she'd go do it, and she'd send me pictures of what they're eating and what they were doing. And so it made it really easy. And then and that's one of the things that I would do to share my day with her. If I'm making food, or if I'm going to go do something, or I go to the park and watch a concert, I'd send her little videos and little clips and that type of stuff. So it was very, very cool. I had a great time, and it was wonderful. So that's it, guys. I'll go ahead and cut this video short and end it right here. But like I said, it is 100% possible to make a long distance relationship work. We made it happen. You can make it happen also as well. And like I said, it all started out coast to coast, and then we traveled back and forth to see each other, relocated, and together got engaged, and then got married, and here we are right now. And like I said, when and that's one of the reasons why we love going on cruises. It's because it's something that's very fun to do, and it always reminds us of how we started our relationship together. You know, so talking about a cruise, and here we are right now. And like I said, we got married at Bridal Veil Falls, and so like I said, everything in the end works out like it's supposed to. So I found a place called Bridal Veil Falls for us to get married. Nothing more appropriate to be able to do something like that there. And then the other thing that happened is I ended up proposing to her on Memorial Day. So, and which was a national holiday, just the name in it itself, Memorial Day. So we'll always remember the day that I proposed to Marilyn, because it was Memorial Day. So that's it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the story. And if you guys got any questions or anything about this, or long distance relationships, that type of stuff, you can always reach out to me, leave a comment. If you want to schedule a consultation at any point to talk about these type of things, if you're in a long distance relationship, you're trying to figure out, you know, if the guy's intentional or the girl's intentional, you can always book a $195 consultation for about an hour. We can talk through it, and then I'll make sure that you end up on the right side of the information that you need to be. So that's it, guys. Peace, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Gonna sing for 5 hours, you know. They got together for the last 5 hours, you know.
How you like it? You like to do rock and roll? How you like it, sir? No,
The classic style.
The classic one.
Style, yes, yes.
All right, let's go.
Beat it.
On the count of
1, 2, 3.
congratulations and celebrations. We want the world to know how happy you can be. Congratulations and celebration. We want the world to know your anniversary.
All right, congratulations, boy David.
In my life. Oh, shit. Okay, my brother fell. This is black ice. Okay. All right, I'm okay. All systems check. All right, I'm good. So let me just penguin it.